Thank you for your time and attention today. This is a topic that I'm completely and extremely passionate about. If you need to have this presentation to follow along, there's a QR code here and at the end. So grab the slides. There's everything in here, including everything that I say during this presentation. So take it. I believe in transparency, so I'm giving it to you. We're going to go fast and try to pack in everything. Please ask questions because this is for you. I want you to be able to share your techniques for visualizing work too, because I want to learn too. My wife is a teacher and she always says, whoever is speaking is learning. So speak up if you'd like to. Okay, hi. I'm Matt Barron and I'm a visual thinker and a visual worker. By the end of this presentation, I hope to illustrate to you how visualizing work leads to better customer service, better customer experience, and better employee engagement, along with a host of other benefits. All right, let's get going. I love setting expectations, so here's the agenda along with an obligatory photo of my family and I at the Grand Canyon. Yes, we got up super early for this sunrise picture, and yes, it was totally worth it. We'll cover some quick basics here about visualizing work, then we'll get into tools, tactics, and some stories. So, how many of you have heard of X marks the spot? I think a lot of us hear this trope when we're kids. We hear it during cartoons, and there's these tropes around treasure maps and finding the treasure map. And what's crazy is that it's real. People used to fight over maps, and they would go to incredible lengths to protect them. They would keep them in waterproof containers and secret compartments, and some people even died trying to protect their maps. When explorers mapped the locations of mines or newly discovered places, it was often illegal actually to copy maps and even punishable by death in at least France, I think Spain as well. However, when maps started to become more commonplace with the invention of the printing press and pens and ink and paper being much more accessible, then crews knew where they were going and what they were doing, and they were more likely to be productive and less likely to mutiny. And although I doubt that your service desk staff or IT staff is really going to mutiny your IT department, this emotion might still exist. Right? The feeling, the desire to mutiny might still exist on some of your teams because they don't have the map. So when every sailor has a copy of a map, or they've memorized it or seen it at least a few times, they know where the dangers are. They know where the safe passages are. They know where they're heading, and they can work more efficiently. The fact of the matter is that once this valuable information is shared, mutinies plummeted, shipwrecks plummeted, and teams were able to accomplish a lot more. They could even go on longer trips as a result of everyone having a map. So maps are one of the first examples of shared visualization tools for work. And the scarcity of maps still exists to this day. How many of you use Google Maps? How many people use Apple Maps? And do you ever switch? Not really, because you trust the one that you're given. Such a fascinating phenomenon. So sure, there are companies that want you to use these maps, and they'll totally give them to you, but they're still kind of like not complete, right? Some of them are mapped in areas that some others aren't, or some of them share data between the mapping companies. In some cases, there are rural areas or like in the rainforests that basically there is no map because you can't automate the map generation. So let's look at something a bit more practical for service management. Because we're not trying to sail across the world or mine gold, so why should we visualize work? When people use visual representations of their work, they are more satisfied with their jobs because they feel more in control of their work and more connected to their colleagues. The study also found that visualizing work can help to reduce stress and improve employee morale. And I put the link at the bottom here. Now, I love this study. It was conducted in 2013. It was an employee engagement study, and it was conducted on certified registered nurses. And I like it because, of course, nursing is not unlike service management. You're building an experience, you're delivering an experience. There's service, there's support, there's humans, there's technology. A lot of what they do is similar to what we do. They're just saving lives while they're doing it. And the study used three main metrics that I don't put on the slide here on purpose, because if you're interested in this stuff, go read about it some more. Don't just put these metrics into work, because metrics without learning are a poorly sharpened sword. They hurt a lot more and they're very dangerous. Anyway, the three metrics that they used was the index of work satisfaction, the Utrecht work engagement scale, and the anticipated turnover scale. So to measure work satisfaction, of course, engagement, of course, and turnover. So I like this because it's so similar to us, and let's not forget that both their environment, the nursing environment, and the service environment, the IT environment, are both very stressful. So you'll know it's time to start visualizing work when you experience confusion. Your teams are confused, or maybe when agents experience frustration or friction. These are the times where I find myself going to this whiteboard over here, and I just start brainstorming things. At a basic level, visualizing work helps us find gaps and opportunities in the work. It gets us all on the same page, too. It takes that invisible work and makes it visible so we can talk about it and work on it together. Visualizing work can help us remove friction and truly reflect on the service experience and the product experience. Mutual collaboration toward a common goal creates belonging. And if you're a leader, that word stands out, because this is what we're trying to create. This is what creates good teams. It's no secret why collaboration improves work. We just rarely have the time to reflect because we're so busy. You see, if we don't do continual service improvement, people quickly become disengaged and demoralized. The people providing a service see when that service is failing and desire to improve it. And that is not a bad thing. In fact, just capturing those ideas that they have when they want to improve a service is a huge step towards continual service improvement. So at a very basic level, having some process maps or other ways to visualize work will improve employee experience. Visualizing work gives people control, autonomy, and opportunity, which leads to them feeling valued, rewarded, part of a team, a sense of fairness, and a more balanced workload. And I love that word, fair, because man, that is such a child thing to want. It's not fair, Daddy. It's not fair, Mom. But really, humans see fairness, and they understand what favoritism looks like. So having all these things will lead to engaged teams and good mental health, which is not to be understressed. We need that mental health, especially in the service desk and the nursing industry. So these are the kinds of things that some employees need, actually, to stay loyal. Whether it's visualizing work or something else, give people some of these things. Give them freedom. Give them opportunity. Heck, I read this slide and I want to work there, right? Control, autonomy, opportunity. I want to feel valued, rewarded, part of a team. So hopefully this gets you there. So visualizations can work. They can be as simple as a to-do list. They can be an indicator, a warning light on your dashboard. It can be tables or lists of raw data. It can be bar charts, which I found out have been around for over 200 years. There is no end to the ways to visualize work, and there are likely new ways being invented right now. And finding the appropriate visualizations is one of those use cases that is actually perfect for these so-called AI and large language models. If you have something that you're trying to visualize, ask it. I only know this because I did. What's the best way to visualize changes in customer satisfaction and SLAs? So This is a great use case. So let's go through some more use cases. I don't put a ton of AI content in here because I assume that you'll go back and use these AIs to your advantage. So please do. So we're going to go through some of the tools. These we're only going to spend a second here because these are very common. In fact, you've probably used a bunch of these. I'm just realizing now that donut is spelled with DOUGH in this slide. I don't know why it's spelled that way, but whatever. And you've probably used a ton of these, maybe not geospatial maps, but there are uses for a lot of these, and we'll even cover word clouds. I talk about word clouds later, but hopefully you find some of these useful. I know I've used heat maps to do self-service portal design. And of course, the top ones here, scatter charts, bar charts, pie charts. I've used those tons to understand, volume of service, that sort of thing. So let's go through some more visuals. Mind maps. Mind maps are great for brainstorming, categorization, and other big topics that need to be broken down into smaller parts. Now, this is my mind map kind of for this presentation. This is where it started. Don't worry, it got better than this. But this is a great way to visualize knowledge topics, training programs, career paths, incident categories. You could totally see, like, why do we have all these incident categories? Okay, put them all on a mind map. See what it looks like. Maybe you've got duplicates. Maybe there's another way to see this information. So I think mind maps are a good way to really visualize. I think career paths is the big one, because here's where you are in the center and here's where you could go. And if you go those ways, then you could go even further into these other ones. So I don't know. I just find them very useful. Here's a very, very common visual in IT service management, the process map. And this is an overly simplified version of it. This one happens to be from the ITIL 4 edition. From my Axelos, you can see I'm referencing it down below. And these can really help. They can help us connect upstream and downstream impacts of work changes and various inputs and outputs of a team and process. So very useful. Hopefully you have some process maps. Usually when I'm giving this presentation live, I ask people, raise your hand if you use process maps. And then do you have all of your processes mapped? And most people don't, but there is great value in having all your processes mapped. Not only because you can talk about the work and work around the work and maybe even make a new process map that maybe, hey, this is where we're headed to. But there's so much value in having a process map, because if you start with process and then select a tool, you know that tool is going to meet your process needs. And if you end up swapping out that tool, you can depend on that process map still. And really, that's where a lot of that value lies. In fact, they say that a fool with a tool is still a fool. But a fool with a tool who has a process map can make their own tools. And that, I think, is really powerful. Here's another example. This is incident management from the ITIL wiki. This is an incredible resource. If you haven't heard of the ITIL wiki, definitely check it out. If you've Googled any process map, you've probably seen something very similar to this. This is made by Stefan and Andrea Kempter. They're these two Germans that started off this group called YASM, which stands for Yet Another Service Management Model. And they have this organization, IT Process Maps, where they share really, really good process maps. So check them out. We'll get into this a little bit when we talk about tools, but having a library of your processes and standard operating procedures is very powerful. There's a couple process mapping standards too, UML and BPMN. Those are very helpful standards for importing and exporting out of these kinds of tools. I should totally give a trigger warning on some of these visuals. This is a Gantt chart, very useful during projects. I'll never forget the first time I had a project manager tell me what I was going to be doing in 2 weeks, and I didn't even know. Good project managers are amazing. Another popular work management tool, the Kanban board. This one shows our video product flow for our own internal videos. You've probably seen these before. I usually have the audience raise their hand if they've used Kanbans before, because everyone kind of has or will eventually in their lives. This one is a free one, Trello specifically. And if you click into these individual cards, you get more details. You get, a description. You can have due dates, checklists, even custom fields. Very useful and powerful tool. The Kanban itself was developed by Taiichi Ohno in 1940s as part of Toyota, and we have taken it to the next level with software, clearly. Here's a very familiar one. This one is service desk dashboard. Probably everyone's got a service desk dashboard. This is very common. It's kind of like an infographic in a way. I have people raise their hands if they use dashboards. Tony North shared something awesome on my podcast, though. He said specifically that he puts the data on his dashboard reflects the decisions that he wants to make better. And I think that's really fascinating, because then you understand, subconsciously where your numbers are heading, and you're working towards making an informed decision. So if you ever hear the phrase data-driven decisions, dashboards can inform those decisions. So if you're trying to increase CSAT, for example, you want to make sure that CSAT is on here, or customer satisfaction. If you're measuring volume or escalation avoidance, those are good things to put on here, like first level resolve tickets, for example. So put on here what's important to you. Here's another dashboard. This one is a patient dashboard on Epic, really old version of Epic, but you can see how all of the patient information is focused. It's all focused on the patient here. What's going to happen during discharge? What did their pain statements say when they came in? How are their vital signs doing? Who's on their treatment team? All very useful information. You can imagine on a service desk how useful this would be if when a caller calls in or someone texts or chats in, you see all this information in one spot. Very useful. So we're seeing more and more ticketing systems implementing this. Value stream mapping. These are kind of like the new kid on the block, and I have to say this one feels very luxurious. If you have time to map out your processes and map out all of this as well, yeah, you're probably ahead of me, actually. So maybe you want to give this presentation next year, or come on my podcast. I would love to hear about your value stream mapping and how you develop these sort of things. Fantastic. This one happens to be, I think, from IT for IT. This is kind of like their process map template that they use. It's detailed and very useful. There's also another one. This is the service value chain from ITIL. It's kind of conceptual only. In fact, they're going to be adding to this, I've been told recently. And there's another version of this that's like 3D that I bought online. That's a pretty good one too, if you want to see it another way. But value streams, again, came from Toyota a little bit later, during the lean days, more like in the 90s. But value streams are very useful. Here's the service value chain from ITIL. Oh, no, this isn't the service value chain from ITIL. I'm sorry. This is an actual service value chain. And what I like about this one is that you could see like the wait times, where we pause our SLAs for waiting for customer, what is that wait time actually like? Do we get the chance to actually measure that? And again, this feels very luxurious again. And you can see how cycle time is measured. And I love this over here, the summary. What is our quality? What is the quality of this? What are we aiming for? What is the total lead time we need? You could totally see this being run for request management, change management, and certainly incident management, something where time is the most important variable. So another one. Here's a new one I hadn't heard of when I started researching this presentation. They're called planograms. And if you've worked in retail, you probably have seen these before. I met a retailer named Sarah, and she described her aging business as, quote, proud to have no standard operating procedures. And that totally shocked me to the point where I needed to know a lot more. But she was hired to add more more operating procedures, and she's been doing it with these planograms. And this is fantastic because what it does is it frees up the staff at the store to focus on the customer. You know, what used to happen is they'd get product in, it'd be sitting on a pallet. They'd maybe have to have a discussion about where it's going to go. And then once they discussed where it was going to go, you're going to have to pull out product, move it to the next spot, put this product in, and then was it in the right spot? And maybe you have to do it all again and move it all over again. So this is brilliant because it frees up agents for real customer interactions, whether they're agents or in a retail situation. It's gonna provide people better service overall, and you're not gonna waste time talking about where stuff should go. Here's a simpler planogram, but you can probably see how useful this is. The OCD nerd in me makes me want to make one of these for a service desk. Like you could see, hey, you're supposed to put all the network cables over here, the mice go over here, the keyboards go over here. You could see this for your closets. There's so many use cases for this, I think. So what I love about this is that we can just look at these other industries and figure out what their unique visualization tools are. You know, financial markets have these tools to watch markets real time. Maybe that's something we need in our observability around service management. What are we doing for event monitoring? I showed one medical industry example, but there's a lot more in the medical industry. They use visuals for everything, like everything. But I just wanted to point this out because there's a huge value in understanding other industries so you can steal from them, clearly. So definitely make sure that you're looking at how other industries do their work all the time. Just pay attention because you'll find guides and tips everywhere. The biggest trendsetter in our industry right now is experience management. Now, that's a bold claim. Because I think we hear the AI term way more often, but I believe that AI is more hype than being put into place currently. Eventually that may flip, but for now, experience is king. And through this discipline, teams are able to visualize and improve experiences for teams. And that's important to understand because people think experience management and they think, I'm just trying to improve the experience. Well, yes. But really, first you get curious about the experience and you start digging into it. And there's a lot of guidance out there about how to apply there isn't a lot of guidance out there about how to apply various techniques of experience management. So I'll give you what I've learned applying experience design techniques at Fortune 500 companies. Now, experience management is not for the faint of heart, and it's not something that you can just do by reading and applying or hearing my presentation and then applying. It takes practice, and I highly recommend having a guide of some kind, someone who's done this before or experienced it before. I'm sorry for that pun there, but anyway, let's keep going. So Deming had OODA, I've got Rapid. This is a simplification of the human design process. To get started, you collect and conduct research. That research then informs the analysis, and visualization is done throughout this cycle. But it is used heavily during analysis to make sense of the chaos and data explosion that happens after you do research. So this means sharing, reviewing, listening, and consuming the research that you have already. And you're doing that in this analysis phase. So research is the foundation that is going to inform some of the key artifacts of experience design. One of the most common artifacts of research is personas. And these are a great tool for us to understand the various perspectives and demographics of the people that we serve and build services for. So personas are an archetype. They are one of the groups of people whom you serve. When I worked in customer service for Great Clips, we had cranky callers. Prototype. They were just angry. So that was an archetype, persona. I think I said prototype. I meant archetype. And here's kind of what they look like. This is a Figma template. So you've probably seen these, and raise your hand if you've used personas before. I'm here to tell you that these are great, especially for business to consumer companies. In service and support, though, sometimes we need something different. We're not trying to get someone to buy apparel or candy or technology. Well, maybe we are. I mean, indirectly, we're trying to, like, maybe you work for a candy company, and that's okay, like indirectly. But we're not trying to get someone to do that. We're trying to support them. So something like age doesn't really matter. It's relevant to the individual, but not to the archetype. Now, introvert, extrovert, that might be useful to know, especially during onboarding, but most likely you want something more like this. This is probably more useful for us. Now, this is an assumption-based prototype. This isn't based on research, so don't use this. But you can see how there would be valuable in understanding whether someone is technical or non-technical. Do they want to talk to people, or would they rather email? Are they in the office every day, or are they remote? Do they like to fix things themselves or want to do it? And if it's all the way over here, we'll fix things themselves. Invest in self-service. Very useful for that demographic then. So you can see how there's value in knowing about these personas, but don't get lost in them. You could make 1,000 of these and not feel like it's enough. You want a right size for your scope specifically. Just use what's logical. Typically, I recommend that people restrict these, so you're only having 4 to 10 of these, depending on your audience size. And these personas, once based in research, will help us understand if our services are meeting their needs and expectations. They can also be used in an attempt to improve services or build services. So, again, these cannot be formed on assumptions. They must be based in research to be useful. Now, you can skip personas completely. You do not need them to do journey mapping, but these personas can help. And speaking of journey maps, these are a hot topic among service providers. They can be used to visualize existing experiences or new experiences. The one that I'm showing here is a Figma template that they provide for free. Journey maps focus on human experiences, illustrating the story of a specific actor as a sequence of steps. And just like Google Maps, there are differing scales of journey maps. You might have a journey map for the entire onboarding process, maybe another journey map for just posting the requisite, maybe another journey map for just the first day of their experience. Very useful to zoom in and out of those processes. So here's a journey map that I built just to demonstrate for this presentation. So this is not based on research. Again, the journey map is meant to be visualized. It's meant to visualize the experience of a new college recruit. So a college person graduated college, they're coming on board to our company. So I conduct the research, and after talking to HR and IT and facilities and corporate security and a bunch of college hires, we identify these main stages. These are what we're going to walk through as an onboarding. Now, these can change. They aren't set in stone, and yours might vary, but just you need a framework, a construct to work within. So these help us kind of understand these phases. And it's certainly as you add fidelity here and understand this more, you might want to shift them later, and that is totally cool. Next, you'll add steps. This is really where the data becomes useful. The only way to know what steps people take during their experience is to ask them. So make sure that you're doing research, because they might be doing something offline that you don't even know about. Like, you don't even know that it's happening. Maybe they're talking to someone that worked at the company. Maybe they're asking their wife to fill out their tax forms for them. Whatever it is, you need to capture those steps. So this is a great moment to get your journey map in front of your customer too, and show them the steps and walk them through it. Oh, you went to a job fair and then you filled out the application, and you hear from the recruit, no, I didn't. I actually waited a few days. And then you put in here, they waited a few days. And then you're like, okay, but how did you remember to put in the application? And then they say, well, so-and-so emailed me. Oh, okay. So there's another step in between job fair and application where an email has been sent. So that sort of information is so key to improving the experience that's being experienced here, that I can't even stress it enough. So work with your customers. That's the lesson to be learned here. Now, this is what we do is we continue on this journey, right? So we walk them through their steps. We walk our employees, our service providers through these steps, and we start to add in more details. So here we're adding in more layers. In this case, this one is goals and experiences. So maybe that's expectations, really. They want to get a job. They want to maximize their benefits. Before day one, they need to protect themselves. And on day one, they want to appear professional and make a good impression. So you can kind of see, these are their goals. And so we show this to the team and we walk through it, and then they provide us with additional things. These are things that are in the user research, or we walk the customer through this and they say, I need help with this step. It's my first tax form. And I'm skipping over weeks and weeks of work. This could take months actually to develop, to talk through these processes and have the service providers add details to these screens. So listening to this stuff is super useful because you start to learn all the details. You get into the fine details of an experience. And what's great is as people are talking through it, they're adding complaints. They're saying, hey, we should do it. We could do this a different way. We could collect applications at the job fair. A pain here is the application form is a lot of typing. How can we reduce stress during interviews for new grads? So there's tons and tons of information on here. Yes, the process isn't perfect. And yes, we can see what we need to improve. We might even take these and prioritize them as work that we can do later. And what's great is once you get a journey map built, it kind of represents one archetype's experience. You can start improving immediately. So for instance, here's one where I put user research right on the journey map. And here you can see why 3 interviews. And so it's obvious that we could take an improvement step here and just combine those 3 interviews into 1 interview. So this is super useful. These journey maps are good because they capture an experience, a moment in time, and they also give you opportunities to improve that experience and kind of list them right there. You can also create journey maps for what the future is going to look like. Like, what if we change this around? What would that look like? And have a discussion. Taking these future journey maps and putting them in front of the people that we serve and the professionals that are involved in delivering the service can help us see what they're thinking about and help them understand, maybe some of our constraints, or maybe there's a faster or better way to improve a service. So here's where we mess up with journey maps, though. We build them based on assumptions. That is a massive problem. And I'm sorry, the text on this slide is off, but on the real recording, it should be right. It says you cannot build a customer journey map if you've never talked to a customer, because you need to. The customers need to build them with you. So you can't build these on assumptions. And we try to oftentimes we fail because we try to make them too much. We try to turn them into everyone's experience. But in reality, every person's experience is completely unique, and certainly every persona's experience is unique. However, if you're looking for something that covers a broader experience but looks like this, what you're looking for is called a service blueprint. And I love this visualization technique because it's much more inclusive. These are super useful for service designers and teams who deliver services. This is especially true for the services that span multiple teams. Imagine that journey maps, but now we show not only what the actor experiences, but also what the backstage actors experience and the activities that they perform. So instead of building one from scratch for this presentation, this is an actual blueprint delivered to a client for onboarding. Now I've removed all their references, and this thing is huge, so there's a QR code here to the full PDF. So I'll give you a quick tour, but basically the service blueprint looks very similar. You've got these phases up along the top. Here above the line, I've got front stage actions. These are the things that our customers experience. So you can see I've got talent acquisition and new hire here. And the manager is below the line. And below the line is backstage actions. These are things that our customer doesn't see us doing. And then as we scroll down, we see more and more details. We see the tools and artifacts. We see opportunities and gaps. As the team is going through this and complaining, we also ask them, how might we, as HMWs, we ask them, how might we resolve this problem that you just announced? And you can see on here, we even put the user research right on the map. It would be great to have everything related to new hires in one spot, says the manager. Well, that is a great opportunity for us to improve. So, very fascinating, great way to visualize stuff. Here's another one, stakeholder maps. These are used to illustrate the various stakeholders of a specific interaction or experience. These maps are used to understand who is involved. They're super useful if you have multiple vendors involved in processes, or in security to understand who sees, touches, or owns specific data. These maps are not only good at determining who needs to be included, but also as a template for the next projects you participate in. I also encourage service teams to use these with DevOps and infrastructure teams to illustrate the impact of their changes. So some similar visuals include value network maps. These are basically the same thing, but then they also will illustrate the value that the stakeholders derive or provide for each other, money, goods, services, information, trust, that sort of thing. Ecosystem maps, these are amazing tools and usually very common for CMDB and network topology. You're probably very used to seeing those service maps. Here's another view where you can categorize stakeholders based on their respective traits and feelings towards the changes that are coming. These views are perfect at cutting to the core of where people are on the change curve. And this concept I stole from one of my friends in HR, Josh. He works at one of the biggest retailers in the US, and they use this curve to simply symbolize whether someone has bought into a change or not. This one specifically is the Kubler-Ross change model. I think it was developed in the 70s to map grief, or in this case, I think shock. I don't particularly like this view. I like this model better, or this version better, simply because it looks more like the Gartner hype cycle or the hype cycle in general. But what's cool is you could have these not only for every employee, like where are they at as a human, but also for every change. Like if you're expecting your agents to undergo 4 org change things, where are they at on this curve? And if you can map where they're at on the curve, then you can understand what messages you need to send to them, what concerns you need to address with them, how they prefer to communicate, so many things. Very useful tool. And I said I would talk about word clouds, and here's where it is. I had David Barrow on my podcast recently, and he said, just take all your ticket data and throw it in. You send out a survey about your service desk. Do you ever hear the words that are in there? Do you read every single one? Well, if you don't have time, throw them into a word cloud. What word is standing out the most? Very useful tool. It's just like holding up a mirror, especially when you ask the customers what they think of the service. This is a great way to reflect it back. Here's another one. This is the empathy map. There's lots of different versions of this, but this one I like because it's really simple looking. And these are really useful for understanding your teams. You could do these for every customer too, but I used it for agents. So like my agents, I had one that was very eco-conscious. And every time that we would go through a change, I would bring up his empathy map because I knew when I proposed these changes, he would have complaints or questions. And so what this allowed me to do is when someone was telling me about the new thing, I could pull up the empathy map, look at Tim and say, oh, he cares about this. Let me ask this to the person who's saying that I have to tell my team about this so that I can understand better what to answer back to them. So This saved me a lot of headaches. It really did. And it helps you to align with your people, whether they're your staff or your customers. Now, let's get into some tooling. Let's get into some nerd stuff here, yeah? Before we start, I do just want to say that there are tons of visualizations tools built into software. So take a look at what you have in your portfolio already before buying something. And that being said, if it's not powerful enough, make sure you look around to find really good visualization tools, because there's some great ones out there. And I'm ready to start. So these are my favorites. I use these a lot. I've got a whiteboard up here. I've got paper in front of me. I've got a webcam in front of me. I've got a digital notepad just like this one. I literally have it all because I love writing. This is how I think. If you see me thinking or talking, I usually have paper in front of me because I can't think without it in front of me. Now, we've spent thousands painting whiteboard paint on our walls in our offices, so just use that stuff. I think that's really what I'm trying to just convince people to do, is to use the manual stuff, because it is still just as freeing. Jotting down your process map with your agents in front of you not only will free them up, it will free their minds to think about these things. And it's just as good as something professional. It's just as good as something, planned out, thought out, prepared for. Anyway, let's keep going because there's tons of these. Miro is easily one of the most powerful visualization tools. I usually have people raise their hands if they use Miro, and it's usually a lot of people. And that's great. Miro, actually, all of the templates or all of the visualization techniques that I've talked about already in this presentation are available in the templates of Miro. Now, those templates are free, so they're not perfect, they're not great, but they're a great starting point. I've got a link here to an open Miro board. It's just open and public, so everyone has right access, and you can go in there and mess around and try stuff out to your heart's content. Here's a huge list of what Miro can do. There's way more than this, but it might be better if I just showed you. So during the presentation, I show people Miro. Highly recommend that you download it and just check it out. So Miro is very versatile. And with most of these tools, you're really just looking for compatibility first. Will this fit into your use case and integrate or ingest data from your tools? After that, selection comes down to usability, cost, features, and adoption. Will people actually use it, or is it just for you? Do you just prefer Power BI and no one else does? Maybe you want to look into learning Tableau because that's what everyone else has. But that's what you're trying to do, is just unify. Here are some of the tools that I've used for building experiences. Again, you just need to find a good product fit. There's a ton of technologists in the world too, so if you can't find someone to help guide you on your selection, please reach out. I can find someone to help you. Some of these tools on the right are amazing at simulating systems and design changes without having to put code in. And this is incredibly useful in our space. If you don't know what I mean, make sure that you scan the QR code at the end and check out my other presentations around experience management. The idea is that you can simulate an entire software experience before you code it. And the beauty of that is that coding is expensive. And so if you can design the software without coding, you can iterate on that software without coding. And once you get to a good enough point, then you can say, okay, now let's code it. And that can save you millions and millions of dollars. And I have seen it save companies millions and millions of dollars. So if you don't understand prototyping, make sure you explore it, especially as a technology leader. Now, this last visual tool I wanted to highlight was simulations. These are called model pits, and they're an ancient and modern tool for warfare and defense applications. And these exist for businesses, believe it or not. Imagine running a service desk as a simulation, or an IT team as a simulation. There's a couple companies that actually do this. Gaming Works, SXP, And CDW actually are known for their IT and business simulations, and they can be used not only for training your team on best practices, but they're immensely useful for disaster recovery planning. They're also great for continual service improvement and procedure level training. They're also just great at helping teams understand how the other teams work and why they need what they need. It's very common to put the CIO on the service desk in these simulations and to give the service desk the CIO roles so that they can both understand where each other is at. And if you haven't experienced the simulation, I highly recommend looking into it. I was so hooked the first time that I saw a simulation that I went and got certified to deliver them myself. Very useful, an immense amount of learning and team building in those rooms. So, time for some best practices. And you've probably been hearing me say a lot of these throughout this because they're not lies. You need to heed these warnings to avoid the waste and anguish that I have experienced. A project is like a river. The only way to know where the water is to look upstream. Involving decision makers and influencers early on avoids the need to explain the research and the contents. It removes the need to present analysis and any conclusions that the team have reached. You won't have to convince people if you bring them along the whole journey because they've been there for the whole time, for the journey. And the same goes for downstream impacts. Having agents and customers involved in the analysis and coming change, it removes their fear. It creates ownership and streamlines org change. If we have to do org change as a separate process, we've screwed something up, right? If we have to tell the organization how parts of it are growing differently, we've screwed up. The organization should be growing together. And that isn't easy because it means conducting regular working sessions. I did not say meetings there, I said working sessions. And the results can be amazing. My favorite projects of all time are the ones that seem impossible. But by including agents and customers at the beginning and executives throughout the entire project, and through teamwork and awkward silences, we get through it all. We can agree and align, and we change. The people change. And the more complexity that is involved in our processes and visualizations, the more you must have some sort of version control. And believe it or not, GitHub actually supports some process mapping. So you could actually use GitHub for this. Now, I've used custom tools for this for years. And if you're at the point where you need version control for your processes, you probably have at least one dedicated person or at least a few people focused on the task. Let them decide what tools and processes to put around your processes. And if I say processes one more time, we'll have too many processes in the slide. But it's important that the team get to choose how to do version control and governance, because that way they'll stick to it. They'll like it. They'll like the governance because they built it. And just like projects, visualizations must start with why. If we don't know why we're visualizing something or doing a project, then we can't create an adequate visuals to meet our goals. And this is important because we usually have really big goals and changes that need to be accomplished. This is the line. A proverbial city in the desert, an idea of a very rich person in the Middle East who wants to build a giant city that is just a wall of glass across the desert. And they put out this image, and I think it stands to reason that it's a brilliant idea to put out an image like this, because the idea is so crazy that people need to see what you're talking about. They need to be able to imagine it before it comes. And that is what visualizing work does. It shows us not only our current reality, but where we could be. Visualization enables teams to collaborate and improve services at a fraction of the cost and risk. It's important to hire engineers and creatives on the search for great service. You need diversity, empathy, and inclusion to deliver truly amazing services and products. I hope that I have inspired you to adapt some visualization techniques. Thank you for coming to my session. This QR code has this and many of my past presentations. It's got links to other useful stuff and lots of ways to connect with me along with this presentation. I also host a podcast called Ticket Volume where we have guests each week to talk about service management, building great experiences, and so much more. Consider subscribing. Finally, thank you for your time and attention and patience. And as always, please remember that this should be used to deliver great service because good service is good business.